just said?
Chavrusa.
Chavrusa.
Study.
Yes. Yep.
Tonight's topic is leading with humility. And I think it's a very important topic. And it's something which we learn specifically from Moshe. And specifically from this week's Torah portion. Humility is a funny thing. It's a virtue that's little understood. And can mean a lot of different things. We're going to explore specifically one approach to humility that we see from Moshe and is applicable to our lives. We live in a world today where everyone's self-promoting. Everyone is trying to put themselves out there. And you need to survive. You need to put out your resume, which is telling you how good I am, right? These are the schools I went to and the honors that I got. This is the great experience that I have. This is the achievements. And if you don't do that, you actually won't get the job, right? And so the same thing's happening on social media. People are throwing out the best of their lives, trying to make themselves look very good to get those likes and clicks. And that's the world we live in. What makes someone great is how much they've achieved, how much they can promote their achievements. Humility flies in the face of that. Humility seems to say that I'm going to lay low. It's not about how great I am. I'm not going to tell anyone how much I know and how much I've achieved. So the question is, how can we be effective in life while being humble? Or even more, how can our humility be a tool for an effective living? And especially the role of leadership. Leadership, when we picture a leader, we picture someone who is very broad-shouldered, right? I don't mean literally, but figuratively, someone who is out there, an extrovert, someone who is promoting themselves, very confident in themselves, almost cocky, right? Very, very forward. And humility, you picture this meek little old man who sits in the corner content with himself. So to lead with humility, to use humility as a tool for leadership, to be a leader who's humble, how does that work out? In this week's Torah portion, we read the very famous line that Moshe was the most humble person who ever walked the face of the earth. Right? I quoted here. The context is interesting. It's when his brother and sister, Miriam and Aaron, turn against him, or say slander about him why he left his wife. He left her because of his prophecy with God, and the degree of prophecy that he had didn't allow him to maintain the intimate relationship with his wife. And they were not too fond of this. They felt for his wife, his sister-in-law. He just abandoned her from Sinai. As soon as he came back from Sinai, he abandoned his wife, and they spoke bad against him. God comes to Moses' defense and says, Miriam and Aaron, you're great, but you don't begin to understand the degree of prophecy that Moses has. And that's why you don't understand why he has to separate from his wife. Within that context, Torah throws out one line and says, in between their complaint and God's response, it's like the narrator is speaking, interjects. Va'ish Moshe anav moed. The man Moses was very humble. Kol ha'adam asher al pnei adam, from every person on the face of the earth. The most humble. That's the accolade we have about Moses. We don't find him being the wisest, despite being called our teacher. We don't find him being the most talented. The most humble. And that is not an accolade found by any other person in the Torah. So Moses is the humble person, the humble shepherd, the humble man. On the other hand, he's also known to be the leader, if not the greatest leader the Jews have ever had. So clearly, humility and leadership are not exclusive. And some commentaries point out that the context here that Moses is being called a humble person right when his leadership or prophecy is being challenged is because his humility is what led him to have the degree of prophecy that he did have. Which means because of his humility is what made him the great person, a great prophet, and great leader. Not despite the humility. So what is this humility? When we think about humility, it's something which is hard to really pin down. What does it mean for a person to be humble?
Well, one would be being your sincere self, which if you try to align with Hashem, sometimes in this world it seems to not be exalted, in certain spheres of our world. So somehow getting in touch with that sincere core, so being humble would be being true to that, and that's your true self. So when I guess they say be true to yourself, that would be a form of humility. You're not putting the facade on, or
okay, so integrity.
Yeah.
Okay. They tell a story of, they tell a joke. There's in a synagogue before the high holidays, and the rabbi goes in front of the ark, and he opens the ark, and he looks inside, and says, God, I know that I'm a nothing, and in front of you, face you, God, I'm totally worthless. Please forgive me. And he goes on about how nothing is. The cantor follows suit and says, God, I'm a nothing. Accept my prayers. And then Yankel, the shoemaker, walks up to the ark with a real broken heart and cries, says, God, I'm a nothing. And then Cantor nudges the rabbi and says, look who thinks of the nothing. Humility is something which we often think of something being put on, right? I am smart, I am sociable, and I am humble. It's another virtue. But really, if humility is a virtue, it's not humility at all. I mean, if it's part of your resume that you're humble, then it's the degree of humility. They say another story. They were calling up people for different honors. Simchas Torah. They say, okay, we'll call up this person. And they say, we're going to call up all the humble people. And so only everyone runs to the front.
And they're all proud to be
They're all proud to be humble. But in truth, if humility is integrity, then there's a certain self-awareness about my humility. There's no problem saying I'm a humble person, right? It's part of my integrity. It's not against that humility. It's not a sense of pride. It's a certain truth. I am a person of integrity. I'm living that way, and that's who I am. And therefore, if you ask, am I humble? Yes, I am. So on that level of humility, to be a person living with integrity is one degree of humility. But I think there's a different stages or different degrees of humility we can talk about. And we're going to explore one of them from this week's Torah portion, another episode of the Torah portion, that I think is a fascinating episode. Moses reaches a breaking point. And this is a very fascinating, interesting piece of Torah. Moses, who's the great leader, has everything under control, is God's messenger, takes the Jews out of Egypt, faces Pharaoh, and suddenly he tells God, he says, God, I've had enough. These Jews, I can't handle them. Right? I handle the Egyptians, Pharaoh. You give me the Jews, forget about it. And the language uses, God, did I give birth to these people that I'm responsible for them? Do you have anything against me that you gave me these people to lead? That's what he tells God. And eventually he tells God, if this is my lot, if this is what you want from me, take my life. I can't. The Jews had complained and complained. Jews complain. And most enough. If this is what I'm destined to be, a leader of these people, God, please take my life. And God responds to him, telling me as a delegate. He should appoint 70 elders to share his responsibility of leadership of the Jewish people. And the Midrash tells us exactly how he did that. How do you find 70 people to make it fair? They're going to take 6 from each tribe. 12 tribes, 6 times 12 is 72. So he has 72 people, and he does a lottery, right? 70 times the word, 70 times people that are going to be part of this group of Zakanim, of elders, and 2 that are not. And everyone takes their lots. 70 elders are chosen who are going to get some of the spirit of Moses, become prophets, minor prophets, and going to help Moshe in this responsibility, overwhelming responsibility of leading the Jewish people. That's what God tells him, you're going to give from your spirit, from your prophecy, from your divine spirit, and hand it to them. Partially, give over to them. What happens is, there are 2 people who are not part of this group of 70, and there's varying opinions if they were the other 2 from the 72 or not. Names Eldad and Medad. And while this is going on, the 70 are with Moshe, they are back in the camp prophesying. And someone runs over to Moshe, we assume it's Moshe's son, says, Dad, there's these 2 rogue prophets. They're prophesying in the camp. And then Joshua, Moses' prime student, says, lock them up. These people are unlicensed prophets. They have no permission, no training. They should not be prophesying. You have to lock them up. And Moses' response is fantastic. It's absolutely, beautiful. I'll read it. Hamakane atali, are you jealous for my sake? Well, me yitain, and who would give? Hopefully, I wished. Kol am Hashem neviim. If only every single person of this nation of God were prophets. Ki yitin Hashem es ruach aleim, that God would place His presence on them. So Moshe responds to Joshua, what are you worried about? People prophesying? You see the threat to me is my leadership? No. I wish that every single one of these people that I'm in charge of will become prophets. This is a generous leader, a leader who is confident enough in his own self, in his own spirit, that is happy for others to partake in this. Jonathan Sachs once said about the Rebbe, he said, good leaders create followers. Great leaders create leaders. He says, Moshe, if I have other people who are prophesying, I've succeeded in my leadership. It's not a threat to me. If anything, it's a compliment. That's what Moshe tells Yeshua. And here we see Moshe in all his glory, right? In his absolutely, the breadth of his leadership. Fast forward a couple of parshas, and we have the episode with Korach. And what happens there, we see the exact opposite reaction. Korach comes to Moshe with a very similar attitude that Moses had here. He says, this is the words Korach used, we all experience God at the Revelation. The whole nation here are godly people. Why do you hold yourself higher than everyone? We can all be leaders. And here suddenly there's a threat to Moshe, a threat to leadership, and Moshe goes all out. Eventually, I had to come to a head-on competition. Moshe says, okay, we'll all take our incense, we'll do the service to God, and we'll see whoever is correct. God will take their incense and fire will come down, everyone else will burn up. And then Moshe has to do this incredible test. If I'm right, the earth will swallow you up, and swallows Korach up. So here we have someone who is suggesting that every single Jew should be a leader because we're all divinely inspired. We all experienced the revelation. We all came face to face with God. And Moshe says, 1 second. You're undermining the leadership, the hierarchy that God put in place. And this rebellion of Korach cost him his life, his reputation. He goes down in Jewish history as being the rebel. The mitzvah, not to be like Korach, not to argue, not to have this division. So a question that a lot of commentaries ask is, how do these two episodes work hand in hand? Are these the same Moses? This is the same Moshe Rabbeinu, the same leader who told Yehoshua, why are you being jealous? I wish every single Jew would become a leader, become a prophet. Is that the same person who tells Korach and knocks him down for suggesting that every Jew should become this leader?
It sort of reminds me of when Aaron's sons go into the light, right? And it's different, but what reminds me of it is that he performs all of that, and if Moshe is right, then the earth will take him. He'll be done. So somehow it has to do with, well, if the divine revelation was equally given, well, maybe it can be too much sometimes for people who aren't qualified for it, say, to prophesy, like the others were. So maybe in his situation, it might be similar, that the way the others sort of were expunged in the light, or never returned. It might be similar with Korach. Maybe like the earth takes him down after he does the test, and Hashem's.
Well, it seems to be the opposite. Instead of rising up in the fire, he's being swallowed in the earth.
Right.
Which seems to suggest that he wasn't so holy. He wasn't rising up in the fire in holiness, rather being swallowed by the earth.
The only thing, thing was that he was saying, Korach, that we were all at the revelation, and maybe sometimes for some people that takes away their humility, and that's your own. That's the way you get swallowed up, like humility.
So you're saying Korach was different to Eldad and Medad. The question is Moshe's reaction being different to Moshe's reaction. And there's a beautiful idea that there's a dual nature to the leadership of Moshe. He served two roles, two functions. And we see this clearly when he passes on his leadership to Yehoshua. There are two expressions used there. It says Moshe placed his hands on Yehoshua and then gave from his spirit to Yehoshua. And the Midrash says something very cryptic. It has used two metaphors to explain these two actions that Moshe did. It said, placing his hands is like pouring from one vessel to another. Giving from his spirit is like lighting one candle from another. So the Midrash says. Now, what I think this means is that there are two ways to lead. And they're both necessary at different times, different places. There's leading through power, and when you lead through influence. Radically different ideas. And we see this, you take an example from education. When you have a child, a parent, a teacher, a principal has power over that child. I can tell my child, you have to do this. I'm forcing you to. If not by twisting your arm, but because of my position of authority, because of the respect you have for me, I am dictating to you how you should behave. It may not be in a forceful way, I'm not saying with the whip, but at the end of the day, you're doing it because I said so. Because I'm in a position of power. And I'm telling my kids, I want you to do this and do that and do that. And they're listening. But I'm using my position of power, of authority, to impose on them my vision, what I want. And they are just on the receiving end, they're just following, right? They have been overwhelmed by my authority, my power is controlling them, and they're going to follow, if they follow, hopefully. Influence works very differently. Influence is, I have no actual power to force my vision on you. I'm in no position to push you around, to impose anything on you. But I share with you a depth, I share with you a vision that you're inspired by, and you want to take that forward. You want to follow it. In education, What that means is you give children, you can show by example, a certain way you live life makes your child want to live a certain same lifestyle. It's being present with them. Just the way you interact with your children, being there for them, giving them the attention they need. And that way, you give over, almost by osmosis, who you are to them. And you give them the tools. And they develop on their own a certain vision that you hope will align with the vision that you have. They're both necessary. When my kid's running onto the road, I don't start telling him, by the way, do you know the dangers, and teaching him physics and how cars work and the injuries that are possible. You scream at them and get off that road. Power is necessary there, right? Young kids especially, there are times where you have to exert your power to make sure they have a framework, a healthy framework, make sure they're safe. But essentially, the ideal is that power should be used only to create a framework. Within that framework, you want to develop an influence. Same with a teacher. You can force your students into a certain way of thinking, a certain lifestyle, a certain behavior pattern. But then as soon as they finish school, it's anybody's game. They no longer have that power over them. They can do whatever they want. But if you've managed to influence them, you can have a teacher that showed you a new world, that inspired you to a certain way of life, and that remains with you forever. It's timeless. You live with that inspiration your whole entire life. So power is for the moment, and influence is something which you carry with you. Some people only have influence after death. Their teachings become influential beyond what they could have imagined. It's incredible to think that we're studying text, the Torah, the commentaries on Torah for thousands of years old, and we're investing our time and efforts to understand these commentaries. Look how influential these rabbis are. From the grave, they're influencing our living, influencing our thinking. Do they have any power over me? Are they here forcing me into a certain position? No. But they carry extreme influence. Leadership roles, you have the CEO, the boss of a company, someone who's in a position, they have to wield power, right? Essentially, they're calling shots. They have to be decisive, make decisions, and tell people what to do. If they don't, they're not doing their job well. They're managers. They have to be instructing people. People are looking to them for guidance. So their power is a necessary function. In other positions, teachers, or even in the workplace you have this as well, a good manager also has influence. You inspire people with your vision. Steve Jobs once said, we don't hire smart people, tell them what to do. You don't need smart people. We hire them, they tell us what to do. So a good leader has to have a vision and instruct people within that vision, but also give space for people within that vision to create. So you have to have that influence. You have to be able to inspire people with your vision, and they can take it further. And the major difference between these two forms of leadership is that power, when you share power, you lose it. If I own 100% of a company, if I'm in total control, and then I have investors come on board that we now share, I lose my control, right? If a principal who has the control of the school tells a child, you know what, I'm giving you some control, the principal loses control, right? So when you're ruling by power, when it's your strength, your authority, as soon as you give some of that up, as soon as you share some of that, you lose what you have. You have less power, less authority now. You're weaker. Influence works the exact opposite way. If I share my influence with someone, if I'm inspired by a certain vision, and I get you inspired, bring you on board to that vision, have I lost anything? No. Now actually, I've doubled it. Not only am I inspired to share that vision, you're inspired to share that vision. And now there's two of us promoting this vision. Right? When a teacher influences a student to be inspired about the topic they're learning, Has the teacher lost some of their inspiration, lost some of their influence? No. Now, there's a student of the class who's excited. It's even easier to get the class excited. So influence works by multiplication instead of division. In the Jewish community of old, leadership was broken up into two. There was the prophet and the king, from much of Jewish history. And later on, also there was the Av Beis Din, the head of the court, and the head of the yeshiva. Similar positions. The king was an authority figure. King had to run the country, make the rules, enforce the law. This is when we're going to war, we're not going to war, create policy. You need someone decisive, someone who's going to wield their authority, not overextend their authority with humility. Kings need humility as well, but essentially it's a position of power. You can't have two kings. It doesn't work. The Talmud says you have one crown, only one head can wear one crown. You can't have two people being king. It's an impossible situation. The king has that ultimate authority. The prophet had no position of power. The prophet had no army backing him, no police force to enforce his word. He was a spiritual figurehead. He was a person who espoused the word of God, and by virtue of respect, by virtue of his influence, people followed his word. He had no way of enforcing. Jeremiah, Isaiah, they had no way of enforcing their word. In fact, they were put in prison for prophesying. They were killed for prophesying. They had no way of protecting themselves, but they spoke the word of God, hoping to promote a certain vision, influencing people. And that was the breakup in the Jewish community. In the early days of the Jewish community, we only had one leader, Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the sole leader. He had both of these positions. He was the leader, the practical leader of the Jewish people, but also the prophet, also the one who taught them Torah. And when he gave over his leadership to Yehoshua, he gave both of those positions over to Yehoshua. That's why there are two expressions. The Medrash says, first, he gave over his power, the king. And that was like pouring from one vessel to another vessel. When I give over power to you, I lose it. The water in one cup gets transferred to another cup. The first cup is now empty. The second cup is full with the water that was in the first cup. Your power has been transferred to someone else, you lose it. The second thing he transferred to Yehoshua was influence. Influence works like a candle. When I light one candle with another candle, the first candle doesn't lose its flame. Actually now it gains. There's more light in the room. When I'm one candle here, the room is a little bright. I light another candle, I've doubled the brightness in the room. My influence, what I'm promoting to the world, has become increased. So when Moshe gave that over to Yehoshua, he gave both those over. Putting his hands on him, the semicha was transferring the leadership of power, of the kingship, the monarchy, and giving over from the ruach, from the spirit, that was promoting Yehoshua as an influencer, which only served to increase Moshe's influence. This, perhaps, is the difference between the two stories. In our one in our parsha, one in a couple of weeks. Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. Moshe says, great. More prophets, more people they didn't try to enforce their law on anyone. More people are speaking the word of God, who are joining me in my crusade to promote a divine consciousness. Incredible. Bring him on board. I wish every single Jew would be espousing the word of God. That'd be great. It doesn't take away from what I'm trying to do. It only helps me out. Korach came with a complaint. Moshe, why do you need to have authority? Who appointed you to be the leader over the Jews? He says, Madua tisnasu. Why do you hold yourself higher? Why are you an authority figure here? Why is there a hierarchy here? We don't need that. Everyone can be a leader. He wasn't talking about everyone being a prophet, espousing the word of God. He was speaking about leadership, of direction, of a king of authority. Moshe said, 1 second. You want to take away from my authority, it's not going to work. the community is going to crumble. We can't have a democracy. Doesn't mean that every single person is a leader. We're gonna crumble, and that's why such a threat such a rebellion was a threat to the very fabric, the fiber of Jewish leadership and Jewish survival, which is why Korach had to be totally quashed, totally pushed aside.
Incidentally, what does Korach mean? What does the root mean?
The name Korach?
Yeah. Like,
So,
like Korban sacrifice, like what would the root Korban mean?
well, Korban and Korach, two different words.
I mean, Korach, but I mean, like the way that Korban means sacrifice, or like the root. How about, like Korach, what would that mean?
Or no offense. But essentially, we have here a beautiful picture of the different forms of leadership. And if we think about it in our own lives, we can think of it both ways. We can go up and go down. We can go up and say, well, who have been leadership figures to me? Right? Yes, definitely the Rebbe. And I'm sure we can point to many others.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Parents, teachers.
Yep.
But we can also divide between those people that have had power over me. Could be in a positive sense, right? When a person enlists in the army and their commander is drilling them, commanding them, he's leading with power. Well, that's it. He's supposed to, but it's still a limited form of leadership of power, and it's almost short-sighted. It's only meant to be in the army, short-sighted, but it's only for this time. I want discipline. As soon as you leave the army, you can do whatever you want, right? So he's not trying to shape you for life. It's not his goal. So there have been people in our lives who have been in positions of power, and people in positions of influence. And chances are, those who have been in positions of influence, we carry with us today much more than those that were in positions of power, because their power has ended, if it has, whereas the influence continues to resonate. And then we can think of it the opposite direction. When we lead, guide others, there are times where we're in positions of power. It could be at work, where we have managerial positions. It could be in our families. It could be amongst a group of friends, where I have a certain position that I can create or tell people what to do. Or are we influencers, where I'm not in a position where I can force anyone to do anything, but I lead by inspiration, by the way I live my life, being a man, a person of integrity, and that imparts a message subconsciously to others who I come in contact with, and has a very deep impression on them. I live a life where I teach others and help them see something deeper, help them go deep within themselves. So we have that with our children. We can force them into positions, try to get them to live a certain lifestyle, try and mold them and shape them, or we can create a space, a healthy space, where we give them tools, we inspire them, we help them understand themselves, understand the world, and on their own they begin to see things a certain way. And one of the big differences between power and influence is, even when you are successful within a position of power, the person who's doing what you want is doing it for you. And therefore it hasn't changed the way they see it. It's not coming from within. It's coming from outside of them, and they're being forced into certain positions, certain behaviors. Whereas influence, it becomes their own, and now they are choosing to do this because they've been influenced by you. It's them, which is why it stays around for a long time. But not only about the time, it's even while they're doing it, it's coming from very deep within themselves. It's something they want to do. It resonates with them. Essentially, both of these forms of leadership need humility. The king had to have humility as well. A Jewish king didn't have ultimate authority. those who had to follow the rule of law, which was revolutionary in the old world. A king had to write a Sefer Torah and carry a Torah wherever he went to remind him that God's above him. So a Jewish king needed humility as well. But essentially, the role of influencer is the ultimate of humility. What I mean is, when we have positions of leadership, the real question is it about me or about the cause, the idea? Often it's, I have to get my message across. I have to promote my agenda, which really is an extension of myself. In that case, I'm always going to be pushing power. Because power is me. It's I am pushing onto you. I am trying to promote myself, my agenda onto you. It's going to always come in a way that I'm imposing on you. But when it's not about me, it's about the cause. I'm leaving for a cause, and hopefully this cause is good enough, important enough, and talks to you enough that it's going to influence you. I'm not pushing anything on you. I'm opening your eyes to something, a reality. I'm showing you something deeper. I'm hopefully living a life promoting a certain idea, an agenda, not my own, but something, a truth that you're going to be inspired by. So one of the big differences is power is I'm pushing myself, whereas influence I'm pushing an idea. Sometimes it can be detriment of self, where I am giving you space at my own cost, but I'm allowing you to explore yourself, and that's how I'm influencing you. So when it comes to humility, I think the ultimate level of humility, and this is a really Hasidic concept, the idea of bittul, where it's, you can translate as self-nullification. That's the negative. It's that it's not about me. There's this beautiful story of a chassid who was a traveling maggid. He used to travel and speak in different shuls, and he once came to a town which was not very fond of chassidim. And they weren't sure if this guy was a chassid, they didn't know. So he said, no. They wanted to test him. How do we know if you're a chassid? And if you're a chassid, you can't speak in the shul. So let me tell you my beliefs. I believe that the chassid, the chassidim, they think about themselves all day. The misnagdim, the non-chassidim, they think about God. Oh, this guy's on outside, he can speak. And he gets up there and gives an impassionate speech about pro-chassidic, and he's really teaching chassidic values. And they all try, start screaming at him. And they said, what you said? He said, let me explain to what I meant. He said, the chassid, God is a given. That God exists and there's a truth, that's 100%. The whole day is trying to figure out, well, where do I fit into this? Do I really exist? Am I something? Am I nothing? That's what he's thinking about himself all day. The non-chassid, that he exists, doesn't even think about it. Of course I exist. The whole day is thinking about, well, does God fit into his agenda? Is there space for God in my life? Thinking about God the whole day. So that bittul doesn't mean that I think lowly of myself, I degrade myself. No, there's nothing to do with that. I don't think of myself. It's not about me. I'm living for a deeper cause, for something higher. And it's not a process where I have to think about, well, how can I be humble? And am I being humble? How can I work on my humility? It's just focusing so intently on the purpose, on the cause, on the mission, that I don't even begin to think of, is it about me, not about me? It could be I'm promoting myself extensively, but I never even thought about myself once. I'm here for a cause. That cause may include me myself being a part of it, it may not, depending on the position, on the time, on the circumstances. But essentially, I'm living for something greater and deeper. I never think about myself. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, one of the greatest sages in the Mishnah, when he was dying, he said, "Eini yodea b'derech eila derech melucha nosi." I don't know which direction they're going to take me. Meaning, I'm going to die, I don't know. I'm going to go to heaven, to hell. And the commentaries asked, really? He was a man who, never wasted a moment, was a great sage, served God, lived his life in dedication to the community. How could he be unsure about his destiny? And the Rebbe once explained, he wasn't unsure because he weighed up the different parts of his life and he had this internal struggle, am I a good person, am I a bad person? He literally never spent a moment thinking about himself. So he never stopped to pause and reflect. Am I doing a good job? Am I a good person? Am I not a good person? He wasn't part of his equation. His whole life was dedicated to a cause. And so he simply never had the moment to consider whether he was doing good in life, whether he was virtuous or non-virtuous. He never thought about himself. And that's the ultimate level of humility, where it's not about, well, I am great, others are greater. If others would have my talent doing better, that's all important and degrees of humility. But they all still, I'm thinking about myself. The question is how much. The question is how I relate to myself versus or vis-a-vis others. The ultimate humility is, it's not about me at all. And so when Moshe heard other people are prophesying, he says, great. If it's about me, then they're somewhat of a competition to me. Even if it still helps me, but still I feel it, I'm not the one promoting this. And therefore, it hurts me a little bit, even if it's somewhat good. But his reaction to Yehoshua was so strong. He says, are you jealous for my sake? I wish that every single Jew would have this. And that just shows how much of what his humility was like. That he was like more humble than others, less humble. The greatest, most humble man, because it was not about him at all. It was just about the cause, about God. And that's perhaps why it's in the same portion, right after that story of Eldad and Medad prophesying, and we find then another quote-unquote threat to his prophecy, or attack on his prophecy, by Aaron and Miriam. In that very context, God says Moshe was the most humble. Because it's in this context where we see his humility, where his prophecy wasn't about him. He probably wished he could be with his wife Zipporah, right? Why would he want to separate from her? But the cause was greater than anything else, than his own needs, than his family's needs, than his wants. There was a cause, and that's all he lived for, without considering the implications of the self and what that would mean. And that is the ultimate humility. In our life, we have many opportunities to express this. We express it how we live in ourselves, how we treat others, and how we deal with others. But the main thing is that never promoting ourselves, never exerting power over others. If we always think about, what am I here for? What cause am I hoping to achieve? What am I promoting? Then we will influence others. We'll influence them more than if we promote ourselves and our own agenda. Because it'll be something, a truth, which will open their eyes. Something deeper, and they'll carry with them far beyond how far outreach extends. When I push something on you, I have power over you. When I'm gone, I die, my power's gone. But if I'm living for a truth, and that truth inspires others, after my death, that inspiration lives on forever. And humble spirit, Moshe was not afraid of dying, wasn't afraid of death. Interestingly, one of the Midrashim say that Eldad and Medad were prophesying on Moshe's death. That Moshe's going to die, not take the Jews into Israel, and Yehoshua will take over. And Yehoshua ran to Moses up in arms. They're prophesying your death. This is before the spies. The Jews who once spoke in the desert for 40 years. Before Moses sinned, where he lost his chance of going to Israel. Yeshua was, Moshe says, okay, it's all done. It's not about me. It's not about my power, my influence. And if I'm going to die and you carry the flame forward, that's okay. So that also, death wasn't afraid of that, because it wasn't about him. It wasn't about his personal agenda. It was about the cause. And that cause transcends his own person, transcends who Moshe was. And that's far greater than anything that he can ever, his own presence can ever achieve, something which can extend itself infinitely.
You know, I was thinking while you were speaking, and a humorous take on the difference also in his leadership was prior to the 70 prophesies that he welcomes, sure. Prior to that, he wanted Hashem to take his life. So in a sense, in a way, he was benefiting because he was at his last thread. You know, it's like, hey, I can't take this complaining. And then he gets, sure, 70, good, because it eases his burden. And then, I guess, having the 70 prophesiers, by the time Korah comes along, it's like, hey, buddy, beat it. You know, I've had a lot of rest.
I got my 70 here.
Hashem, I like my role now. You're going.
Yes. Like,